Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of rock and roll comes one of the most legendary albums of all time, showcasing an eclectic mix of styles and sounds, all from the most iconic band of their generation, delivering a collection of songs that the Fab Four's fans will never forget. We're talking about the White Album. The White Album, also known as The Beatles, is the ninth studio album by the legendary group and featured John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. The album was helmed by longtime Beatles producer George Martin and was released on November 22, 1968. The White Album, the Beatles' only double album, was primarily written while the band was on a transcendental meditation trip in Rishikesh, India. The songs were stripped down from what fans were accustomed to hearing from the band, especially when compared to 1967's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The record's cover was also stripped down from previous albums and was a plain white surface featuring only the group's name on the front. Sessions for the album began after the Beatles returned to Abbey Road Studios in London in May of 1968. But tensions within the band were high, and that led to problems during the sessions. Much of that was attributed to the relationship between John and Yoko Ono, who was now a factor in the studio. The studio atmosphere for the Beatles had primarily included just the four band members themselves and Martin, with very few exceptions. But Ono's presence was not the only issue, as creative differences were also coming into play, thanks to each Beatles' desire to venture into his own career. This was evident on the album, as only 16 of the 30 tracks featured all four Beatles. However, the band continued forward with the recording sessions, and the album was ultimately finished on October 14, 1968. While the lack of cohesion made for a somewhat chaotic listening experience, the White Album was nonetheless received favorably overall by critics. The White Album debuted at number 1 in the UK upon its release, spent a total of 8 weeks on the charts, and went platinum. The record only debuted at number 11 on the American charts, but went to the top spot and ultimately spent 186 weeks in the top 200. It sold over 12 million copies in the United States alone and has been certified platinum 24 times. The White Album remains a hugely important snapshot of the Beatles' career during the late 1960s. The Beatles' willingness to experiment with different styles and sounds, as well as the record's overall cultural impact on the world at large, makes the White Album one of the most popular releases in music history. And that's the lowdown on the White Album. So by the time the Beatles get to 1968, we're looking at the ninth studio album, and it's simply titled The Beatles. And typically here on the 6M, I start off with a little bit of an introduction, a story that might have something to do that relates to the topic at hand. But look, it's the freaking Beatles White Album. I mean, everybody read the subject line here. You know what we're here to talk about, and it's a big album, so we want to jump in it. This is in stark contrast to a lot of things that they did before, much in the same way Sgt. Pepper was in stark contrast to the things they'd done before. The great thing about this band was that their formula, they had a formula, because most successful bands have a formula that works for them. And the Beatles were no different. However, the Beatles formula was whatever they said it was. It wasn't, well, here's the four of us and we shake our heads and scream at the same time. Yeah, but that's because that's what they wanted. They weren't pigeonholed into that. They didn't have a studio telling them, well, you better go out there and shake your heads and grow that hair longer. Just grow it as long as you can. That was them, and they did it their way. I mean, evidenced by the fact that, a song like Hey Jude, I mean, George Martin told both of them, told Paul especially, well, we can't put this on the radio. It's like, why? Well, the radio stations won't play it. It's too long. And Paul's response was, we're the Beatles. They'll play it. It'll be fine. And he was right. Every radio station on the planet played it. Because again, whatever the formula was in their minds, they dictated the formula. So by the time we get to the White Album, it's a huge hodgepodge. I've always considered this like a melting pot of styles, of different musical tastes, sort of all thrown into the pot. And it feels like all four of them working together to do this. Whether or not that's the actual truth, may be up for some debate, depending on who you are. But Phil, this album has always felt like to me that it was sort of a consensus effort to, hey, let's get back in the studio and have some fun. I mean, that's what the White Album is to me, is just fun. What's your overall impression of this major album for this band?
Um, I think it's one of my favorite Beatles albums just because there are so many big songs from it that I think of when I think of the Beatles. I don't know if that makes a cohesive album, but there are a lot of great songs on it.
Absolutely. And it's the only double album they ever released, which there again, because it's them, there's always been things said about, was the album too big? Should have been cut in half. Even the Beatles themselves, George and Ringo both said it should have been, released independently, one album and then a second album. And I think Ringo used the words, it should have been the White and the Whiter album. And Paul's response was, it's the freaking Beatles White Album. Shut up. It's perfect the way it is. Because Paul was a grand scope kind of guy. He a big picture kind of guy. He saw what it meant. And dude, I don't know how often bands were of the day were doing double albums, but this seems like yet another example of the Beatles, as I said before, just being themselves and doing whatever it was they wanted to do. Uh, we'll get into it as we get into the tracks here, but for you personally, is this album just like a major departure from where they were, or do you think this is just a prime example of what they can do when they're just having fun? Or was this, yes, it's a classic. Is it too far off the wall, you think, compared to what they did earlier?
I don't think it's too far off the wall, and maybe that's just because I didn't have the context of knowing exactly where they came from when I first discovered the Beatles. Um, yeah, I think by the time I started listening to them, those some of the bigger songs on this album are seen as quintessential Beatles songs.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of these songs on this, and again, kids, a double album. A lot of these tracks, you just can't, you can't talk about the Beatles discography unless you talk about these songs. I mean, there's so many great hits on here and memorable songs that have stood the test of time. They've been used in Hollywood. They've been used on movie soundtracks and in films and TV and in literature, poetry, even. I mean, it's a lot of this stuff is just again because it's them. They made such an indelible mark on the business and on the world of rock and roll, of course, and music in general. Basically, anything they did um, garnered attention, but especially this album. I've always loved the fact that the White Album, if you look at it compared to, say, the first album, or even compare it to Pepper, it it's still them, but at the same time, it's still radically, in my mind, in my head, it's radically different. And I love that they're not afraid to experiment. It's always been one of my favorite things about this band. There's a lot to get here, kids. Get to, I should say. So we're gonna kick this thing off. Let's talk about. And back in the day, a double album meant two records, of course. So four sides. I mean, that's a lot of listening. Uh, these days, who cares? It's all digital, and you just stream one track after another. But like to get up off your couch and to manually flip the album over, put the needle back down, drop the needle, as the kids say, and start playing side two, just to get up off your couch, man. And dude, I'm old enough to have remembered 45 records and 33 LPs. So uh, when I was a kid, those were still obviously a thing. And um, yeah, to get up off your couch, that I mean, that doesn't sound like much today, but trust me, it's an effort. You know, so it's got to be worth it, I guess is what I'm saying. Side one of the first double album of the White Album here, back in the USSR. Phil, we know about the sort of maybe competition, I guess we could say, between the Beatles and the Beach Boys at the time. Brian Wilson, of course, the creative force behind the Beach Boys. And we saw Sergeant Pepper, Pet Sounds, all that era kind of coming together. And again, an unofficial competition between these two bands. The word on this song has always been that Paul wrote this sort of as a parody of Chuck Berry's "Back in the USA" from '55. But also, I mean, it's obvious that this has got a very Beach Boys vibe to it, and supposedly because a lot of this album, kids, was written in Rishikesh. and we'll get there as well. So Mike Love from the Beach Boys, the story's always been that he sort of gave Paul some inspiration to write this song. And so we've got Back in the USSR, a fun song, a toe tapper, and a great way to start the album. You think?
Yeah, I mean, you can clearly hear the Beach Boys influences on this. I mean, like especially like in the breakdown in the middle, and they when they do the vocals, it's. I mean, it's the Beach Boys record almost.
I'm just hearing in my head, ooh, that's good stuff, man. Uh, yeah, and almost, and I mean, I don't know that they would take offense to it, but it's almost such of a parody that it's, I don't know, it borderlines on thumbing their nose at the Beach Boys, maybe just a little, maybe it's just the way I'm hearing it, but yeah, I say the words competition a bunch with them at the Beach Boys, but I don't know if it was competition for John and Paul. It might have been competition for the Beach Boys. You know what I mean? Like in their minds, this was competition, but maybe John and Paul didn't look at it that way. I mean, who was really on John and Paul's level at their creative peak? I mean, honestly. So, um, yeah, it's a good song. And with it being back in the USSR, of course, they're singing about the Ukraine girls really knocked me out. George is always on my mind. Very nice touch. Goes back to Ray Charles, right? Um,
Yep.
I love the fact that they throw random influences into this song, into their catalog, I should say, through the years. But I don't know. I think this is one of the strongest albums on the record, if for no other reason because it's a rocker.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
this
for
is where
sure.
they were. This is where they were their strongest. Is when John and Paul was kind of sort of working together. And this song really, I mean, even though Paul wrote it, this song really does feel like it's a collaboration. Again, maybe it's just the way it hits my ear, but it doesn't feel like a Paul song to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. Um, but I think that's just because of the Beach Boys influence. It doesn't seem like his usual vibe.
And as we get into the album here, folks, it's obvious that um, the ebb and flow. When we did Rubber Soul, there was a lot of ebb and flow. They would take you up and then they would bring you down. There's a lot of that on that album. And you don't really know those things until you really dive into it and start looking at it. Song 2 on the first record here, Dear Prudence. And I love this song. It's John being John. And the song is famously about Miro Farrow's sister, Prudence Farrow. And they were all in Rishikesh together. It was the Beatles and a ton of other celebrities. And supposedly she wouldn't come out of her room all that much. And John would, I guess, sing this song in her door. I don't know how the story exactly goes, but this song was written for her. Like, why don't you come out and play, come out and hang out with us, that kind of thing. Dude, I think this is one of John's better vocals and one of his better songs, whether solo or with the Beatles, either one.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's I really like the tone of it. It's kind of a ballad, but it's I think it's so drastically different from the first song that it kind of is jarring at first. But I think
Yeah.
on its own, it's a great song.
Yeah, it is. I said the words earlier, stark contrast to the first song on this album. It really is sort of night and day. And it kind of feels like, well, the first, really when you hear the rockers on an album, it's like, oh, well, the rock song was John's and the love song was Paul's. That's kind of how it always went. But here, the first song is Paul's and it's a rocker, and the second song is more of a slowed down love song and it's John. So never let it be said they couldn't switch off. I find it interesting, man, that they could switch off either one, and you could argue that Paul could write the better love song, but John was fully capable of writing a song that would, tug at the heartstrings. I don't know if I would call this one a love song, but um, it definitely fits the mold. The third song, Glass Onion. Dude, I had to hurry to get to this because I love this freaking song. This was done, and this was not an unheard of thing in rock and roll, was to name check other songs. But and we see during this, like the early days of soul, early days of rock and roll, records did it all the time. And it was like to sort of piggyback off the success of another record. The Beatles are name dropping themselves, which is pretty freaking awesome. But we get a lot of references in this song. Um, we get, the walrus was Paul. We get Lucy in the Sky. And we get, I told you all about the Fool on the Hill. We get all this stuff. Man, this is maybe my favorite song, and that's a lot of tunes to go through, but it's maybe my favorite song on the White Album, dude. I love this song.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Glass Onion. I think like if any song, like if you were a Beatles fan, you almost, wanted that unwanted hint that this was kind of it and they were winding down. I feel like this song is kind of telling you in so many ways. Like this is like it almost feels like this is the note on this album that's telling you like we're winding up to that last hurrah.
Oh man, dude, I don't know if I've ever looked at it that way before, but that's an excellent point. Yeah, they were, as we've said on this show before, man, they were off the road. They couldn't wait to stop touring. The performance was now the album itself in the studio. I mean, yeah, they were sick of the grind, sick of the life. Yeah, and by this time, Phil, sick of each other.
Yeah.
Um, you're right, man. This song very much did it. Um,
Um when I think Glass Onion though, there's a I don't know if you've ever heard this, but DJ Danger Mouse he took this album and Jay Z's Black album and he mixed them together to make what is called the Gray album. So what you have is like he took all of these. At one point, Jay Z put out an a cappella version of the Black album, and so he took the a cappellas from that, and then he split up all of these samples from the White album, and he made this album out of it. And so one of the songs he sampled is Glass Onion. It's it's such a weird mix, but it's so cool at the same time.
dude, I've never heard about that. That's pretty freaking awesome, man. I'm gonna have to check that out. Um, it's funny because I've heard before, like these song mashups. There's some guys on YouTube. Some do it much better than others because some songs just don't work together. But I've heard some Beatles songs mashed up with other stuff. But I think the reason that works quite a bit is because the Beatles were their melodies were there, and they were such good musicians, and everything just sort of had a rhyme and reason to it, which makes sense. Why it would work in another genre with another genre, I should say. Um, yeah, what do you think about the name checking in this song, man? I mean, it's deliberate. Obviously, it's something that supposedly the story is that Lennon deliberately wrote the lyrics to mock the fans who claim to find hidden messages in songs. Hence the line, "Here's another clue for you all. The walrus was Paul." And we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but dude, people were convinced that Paul McCartney had died in a car crash and had lost his head, that he had been, and that the Paul that we had known up to that point was a body double, that it was a guy who was a singer, who was an amateur musician, and they found this guy, and his real name was Billy Shears, which is why the name dropped him on Sergeant Pepper. It's hours of deep diving, Phil. If you've never done it, if you've got a free evening, because once you go down the rabbit hole, man, you have video after video after video. It's insane, dude. What do you think about the name checking in this tune?
I mean, I think it's a lot of tongue in cheek, you know, mocking the fans in some ways. And I've absolutely heard of um the Paul theory, which is insane.
Yep.
um, but yeah, and there's so many people that I've seen that'll take hints from this song and go, "Look, he's really trying to tell us." It's like, no, 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 no. Paul is still here with us. Like I've seen people that'll argue they don't look the same and put pictures next to each other, and oh, his ears look different here, and his nose is in a different spot here. You can see the plastic surgery here. It's like, no, no, no.
Yeah, it's so odd because like he wasn't dead. Like it's almost like when Elvis died, people couldn't accept it, so well, Elvis isn't really dead. He's just hiding. because he couldn't take being a celebrity anymore and he wanted to get away. I'm like, wait a minute, dude. I can almost buy that. That's fans can't let go. But Paul was there. It's not like they lost him and then people trying to make themselves feel better. It's so weird. But yeah, man, it's there again, kids. If you've never researched it, don't do it right now. You're listening to the show, but if you want to research it afterward, go ahead. And lot of deep diving. So I've done it. I've gone down the rabbit hole, Phil. It's scary. So, um, next tune up for us on this album, and yeah, we're kind of moving quick here, right? But there's a lot of tunes here, man. Obla di Obla da. And this is fun stuff. This thing supposedly just started from John going to the piano and just banging away on it. And they just started recording and they started doing demos and it just came from out of nowhere. Which a lot of the Beatles' best stuff just sort of supposedly came out, like Yesterday came from a dream. Okay, crazy. Stuff just kind of came to them from out of nowhere. This is one of those sing along, happy fun time songs. Not every Beatles song could probably be played with kids singing along and stuff. I mean, a lot of them could, but some of them probably can't. But like this one, dude, this is such an everybody from every walk of life song, and it's just a feel good song. And I love that this is on the White Album because I think it just fits the spirit of the album being, I don't know if I want to say experimental, but different and happy and laid back. And the album just doesn't feel too overproduced to me at all. And I think this song just goes along with it. What do you think?
This is actually one of those songs where you can tell they didn't have an editor in there going, yeah, how about we leave some of these on the cutting room floor, and you could just feel it. They were just like, nope, everything's going on. Like, and I'm sure not everything they recorded went on this album, but the amount of stuff that got on this album that probably wouldn't make other Beatles albums, I feel like Obla Di Obla Da is definitely one of them. And that's not to say this is a terrible song, but it just seems like one of those things that were like, okay, this is a cool song. Let's just put it on there.
Because they're the Beatles and no one tells them no, man. Not even their own producer tells them no. And George Martin's producing this record, again, as always. And yeah, I mean, who's he to tell them no at this point? Look at the track record they have, man. I get what you're saying, though. This feels very jam session to me. This doesn't feel like this has to go on the album, lads. This feels like let's just have fun and be stupid for a minute, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there are a few songs on this album like that that definitely
Yes.
feel like they're just like messing around and they just ended up putting it on an album.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I'm okay with that. I have a soft spot in my heart for this because it's just uh, the demos for this song on the anthology are really interesting because the tempo is not quite as fast, the lyrics aren't fully formed yet, and yeah, I just dig this song. There's just something about it. It's just, I guess it's got charm. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Um, the next song, maybe so not so much charm. This is Wild Honey Pie, and it's I don't know how I feel about this song. It's very different. It doesn't feel like it has any rhyme or reason at all. And it's just, I don't know, dude. Talk about cutting room floor. If this had never been on the album, I would have been totally fine with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's one of those that I skip when I listen to a White Album
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I don't really get anything out of it, and it's so short. It's almost like it's a skit almost.
What's the point of it? Like, I mean, what do you take from it? Is there anything to even take from it? Do you know what I mean?
Not really. I don't know.
I don't think there is. Yeah, I don't think there is. Supposedly, well, not supposedly, kids. This was actually just Paul. The song mainly consists of the title being chanted repeatedly and was performed by McCartney without the participation of the other Beatles. It's often viewed as a filler track. I can see that totally, and it's inconsequential and unmemorable due to its experimental nature. I mean, experimental is a nice way of putting it. This is yeah. It's maybe different's too nice as well. We don't spend a lot of time on this one, but it's a blip. So we'll make our review of it a blip. So that works. The next one is different. This is I think the piano is what saves. Uh, I don't know, something about this song. It just sounds like it feels like a tall tale. Like this is like Paul Bunyan. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's got that feel to it. I'm not very crazy about Yoko being on this album, uh, especially because you can hear her on this song,
Yes.
and that's usually a train wreck when she puts her voice on basically anything. So if it were just John and the Beatles singing along with some people helping them out during the chorus, I'd be fine with that. But every time I hear her, it just ruins it for me. Are you a fan of the continuing story of Bungalow Bill?
No, not really. I yeah, like I'm telling you, like this one and like those three songs in a row, I kind of hit the skip on them. It does not say they're terrible. I'm just not a big fan of them.
And the story behind this song is about, again, they're all in Rishikesh when this album happened, and someone who was there with them, I don't know if the guy was ever named, left the retreat for a few weeks to go hunting for tigers. And so John wrote it as sort of a like a thumb in the eye to this guy, is it to say, hey, you're supposed to be here and meditating. It's about peace and love and inner soul and all that crap. And you're going to go hunt and kill animals. That's great. So if you know that story going in and you hear, hey, Bungalow Bill, what did you kill? That's kind of cool because it's John being John and saying, well, I don't, you know what? Let's write a song about it. Screw that guy. I kind of dig that. So if there's anything to take away from this song, I'll take that from it. Um, we'll rush through that one to get to what may be the most classic song on this double album. Maybe George's best of all time, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And I told you this before, Phil. I don't know if you've ever heard the bare naked like demo on the White Album, or excuse me, on the anthology. In my opinion, it's better than this actual finished product because it's basically just him with the guitar. But man, this song, in my mind, I think it's George's best work. What do you think? I know you're a big Harrison fan, right? So what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's for sure George's best contribution to the group. Um, I think towards the end, like around this time period, George had really grown as an artist, and I feel like he was just itching to write. I feel like he was itching to, get in there and be a bigger part of the albums. And like this, and some of the other things he wrote for this album were a definite, um, lost words there, but I think they were definite proof that he was ready.
Yeah, this song, yeah, excellent point. This song, if nothing else he's done to this point, says, I think I'm over this Beatles thing. I think I'm ready to move on with my life, which he said. He was basically saying in interviews at the time, he was hinting around at the fact that, yeah, I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing. I don't know if I need this anymore. So, you know, typically the Beatles tried to circle the wagons, and it was the idea of all four guys working together. It's like, well, look, if we have problems, let's try to fix them internally. But occasionally, the random interview would get out, or someone would say something and it'd be quoted in a magazine or whatnot. And I think you could go back during those interviews and look at George's body language and look at his face and just tell that he was burned out. He was ready to go. And
Yeah,
if a guy
yeah,
writes this kind of song, man, um, and it's just him and that vocal. I don't know if his voice has ever sounded better either. I mean, it's uh, the lyrics in the song fit the song. It's like a poem. If you just read the lyrics by themselves, it's just nothing but poetry, in my opinion. So, what is it about this song that does it for you? What do you think that's working for George during the course of this song?
yeah. I just think that I think the piano on this song is fantastic, and then his vocals are really good, and you get like I feel like this is one of his better solos as well. Um, and it sounds like it was trimmed down from what I understand.
Mhm.
But I just feel like this is like his one of his best performances all around, writing, singing, and playing. And yeah, you could just feel that he was creatively stifled.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this we should note that although he's not credited on the album, Clapton does play on this song,
Yeah,
which you have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think was this the first time that someone besides the Beatles, besides someone in an orchestra, had played on a Beatles song on an album? Because Billy Preston came along for the Let It Be sessions,
right.
but he
Uh,
was not there quite yet. So I think this marked the first time, unless there's someone I'm not thinking of. I think this was the first time.
Um, if I remember some of the stories correctly, um, bringing Clapton in was George's idea because
Mhm.
he was having problems finishing a song because they were arguing a lot, and so he wanted to bring somebody else in to work with at the time to kind of ease the sessions. And it was kind of the same relationship with Billy Preston.
It's funny on the anthology because there's actual audio from John where he's talking about that time, and he said it's funny how every time we brought someone inside the studio, everyone suddenly is on their best behavior. No one's fighting with anyone anymore because it shows them all sort of rallying around Billy because they knew Billy from Germany in the early days, way back, and Billy's in there smiling and they're all laughing and cutting up with each other, and no one's upset anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, it's almost like we have to get along for the kids' sake. You know what I mean? Let's stop fighting in front of the kids or something. But I can buy that he would want help from his friend to finish this song. And plus, if Clapton, I don't know if the story if Clapton was actually physically there with the four of them. It wouldn't surprise me if he was. But yeah, he wasn't credited for this song, but he's definitely on there. Um, this is the next track is "Happiness Is a Warm Gun," and it's probably one of the most singable songs, but just because of the hypocrisy in the lyrics. But this was all done. Um, but of course, this is a John song. I mean, funny how "Happiness Is a Warm Gun" is a John. Of course, it is because John didn't care. Because John's like, I'm going to sing about it. I don't care. And the story that I'd always heard was that this was what was on the cover of a Soldier of Fortune magazine. I don't know why John saw an issue of Soldier of Fortune. Maybe it was on a newsstand somewhere. But the actual quote was "Happiness is a warm gun." He thought that was just the worst thing he'd ever heard. But it stuck with him, and he had to write a song about it. So, what's your thoughts on this tune?
Um, I think it's one of my favorite songs on the album, actually. Um, just John's vocals at the beginning of the song are just so good. Um, all of the stuff like that vamp that plays toward the beginning of the song that goes into that distorted like guitar solo. It's all so cool, man. I love this song.
A lot of Yoko on this tune again. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it, man. She's all over it. Um, I almost give it a pass just because I like the song so much. Um, yeah, I don't know, but uh, there's been some people suggesting that there's a like a sexual thing behind the warm gun aspect of this song. But he always said that the thing about the headline was true. He denied it, of course, and I don't know. I mean, it all depends on who you believe, and as a lot of things with these four guys, they let a lot of things open to interpretation. Sometimes they wouldn't even tell you if you were right or wrong; they just let you kind of figure it out. John described this song as being in sort of three parts, which is interesting because I had never heard this before. And the way the sing along happens is pretty cool, and all that stuff kind of sticks out to me. And but again, it's this idea that there's more to this song um, than what we initially thought there would be. And again, I dig this a lot. But there's like actually been suggestions over the years that like the song was about heroin. And I'm
Hmm.
like, man, some people really are digging for whatever they can get their hands on, aren't they? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean everything's open to interpretation, but I never interpreted it that way. I was never quite sure what the song was about.
Right.
But man, definitely not something I would walk around singing out loud outside.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very true.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
he go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but yeah, just the I feel like it's one of the better songs on the album. It's you just can't go wrong with this. I don't care who you play this for. It's something like about it.
And he described talk about the three sections. He described the three sections as the dirty old man, the junkie, and the gunman. And there is some throwback stuff to um, "Happiness is a Warm Gun, Mama." Yes, it is. And the "Bang Bang Shoot Shoot" kind of sounds like a sort of a sweet, sick and twisted doo wop song or something. Got that little chorus in the background, and it does kind of have a sexual thing happening. You know, when I hold you in my arms and I feel my finger on your trigger, and it's like, what's he singing about now? But yeah, it's all good. I'm with you though, man. I this is one of my favorite tunes on the album, and I think it's one of the better songs on there. And again, very John. I don't think this is a song that Paul McCartney could have written, if I'm being honest. So I think
Yeah,
John was more apt to go there than Paul would.
yeah, for sure. This is definitely a John song through and through.
That's side one, kids. We're kicking off side two with "Martha, My Dear," which is a cute little charming bit of fluff, if I can call it that. And I say that in a nice way because I do like this song. And that's funny because like Paul would just take inspiration from real things in his life. We found out a lot of the songs on Rubber Soul had to do with Paul's then girlfriend Jane Asher. So he'll just take stuff from his normal life and throw it into a song. And actually, Martha is his sheepdog, which I never knew that until I started diving into this, and I've been listening to the song for years. Um, it's just such a cute little song, man. It's like it's very quaint. It kind of feels there was a lot of moments with this group where they sounded like they were doing stuff well beyond their years. This kind of sounds like a little song that you can imagine an older guy singing to his wife in a retirement home or something. It just has that vibe to it. You know what I mean? So, what's your opinion on Martha, My Dear?
Big fan of this song. It's just something about it. Just is it's such a feel good song. Um, there's just certain parts of it that I would say structurally that it builds really well. Like from the simple piano at the beginning of it until then you get the horns and it gets into this like big. I don't want to say it's a solo, but it's not a solo because you get all the instrumentation towards the middle of it, and it's just such a good song to me.
Yeah, I dig it a lot. I think it's really well done, and it's again to me, it's just quaint and it just feels old fashioned, but I love it. I think it fits. The Paul is dead thing doesn't let go here because supposedly, yeah, supposedly if you play this song backwards, you can hear the words "Paul is dead, man. Miss him, miss him, miss him." Like I would not be shocked if that was put in on purpose because again, they wanted to mess with people. So we go from Martha, My Dear to I'm So Tired. Dude, I can sing along with this song all the time, and I often get the words wrong. You'd think by now I got the lyrics figured out. I really don't. For some weird reason, I don't, but I'll screw them up. Dude, God bless it, man. I love this song. There's something about this that just, it's very John. It fits. You'd say I'm putting you on, but it's no joke. It's doing me harm. I can't sleep. I can't stop my brain. Those 3 weeks, I'm going insane. He gets that part and he screams at this time. It's like this song is building up to this crescendo of him getting so frustrated because she's left him. Dude, I love this song so much, man. It's one of my favorites on this album.
Yeah, I mean they do this several times where um, Paul will write this great um, like feel good song like Martha My Dear, and then they'll follow it with John doing like this more dark song of where he's at the time, and it's weird. Like I don't put it past them that it wasn't intentional that they would come with like this great love song and then come afterwards like with like a kind of like dark breakup like song.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired is a perfect example of that. I mean, talk about something that is really catchy and fun, like you said, to sing along to. Um, yeah, this is. I would say it's one of my favorite Lennon songs on the album.
Yeah, it's really good. You can hear the frustration in his voice. You can hear the angst in his voice. I mean, every time I hear this song, it legit sounds like it's 3 in the morning. He hasn't slept in a couple of days. His eyes are heavy. He's got bags under his eyes. He's tired. He's chain smoking. I mean, every time, and the chain smoking's in the song too. And it's like, um, it's very much a guy who feels like he's at the end of his rope and he doesn't know what to do. She won't talk to him. She won't have any contact with him. Man, if you've ever been dumped by a girl, kids, this is your song. I'm telling you, because man, it fits. Uh, yeah, good stuff and sad at the same time. But it's like I said, it's John. That's John for you. As I record this on my end, I've got a bird near the window just tearing it up, singing to somebody, which is funny because the next track on this album is Blackbird, and there's actual bird songs on this album. So maybe that bird's out there just for good karma. That's what I'm going to say anyhow. Um, I love this song. This is another great Paul song. Um, and it's one of those songs that's been covered a bunch over the years, as a lot of Beatles songs have, but no one does it like he does. And it's just him on guitar. There's no one else on this song. And, Phil, if nothing else, the White Album is showing us, like you said with George, they're branching off to do their own things. Several of these songs, all the Beatles aren't even playing on the song together. I mean, this is an example of the song. I think Blackbird is one of the strongest of Paul's catalog, and that's a big catalog. But I love this song, man.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is again, you could see the makings of him doing solo stuff is there. The arpeggio throughout the song is really really good. It's the reason why it's covered so much. It's just such an interesting arpeggio to try and replay. Um, but I mean, even his vocals on this are just, I mean, you can't get much better than this song. I think it's again one of the highlights of the album. I almost want to say once you get past the first 6 songs on the album, I feel like the album goes into a bunch of songs where it just doesn't miss.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good call. I agree with that. There's two different takes on the clicking noise in the song. One version says that it's a metronome, but another version says they actually placed a mic beside Paul's shoes, and he's just keeping the beat with his foot, tapping along. So we'll let you decide what you think it is, but good little song. And again, I think it's one of the strongest that Paul's ever done. And you know, a lot of this album makes me happy, but as a diehard Beatles fan, a lot of this kind of makes me not happy because I know that they are splitting up and that they're not all working together and playing together and singing together. They are here and there, but I just imagine as good as this song is, if John had chimed in with him at some point and it'd been a duet, dude, I just imagine how good that would have sounded with both these guys on this tune. But we got what we got, and I dig it. Um, the next song is a skip for me. I'm not much of a fan of Piggies, and I get what George was going for. George was very zen. We kind of knew him as sort of the spiritual Beatle, the deep introspective guy who's looking more toward the heavens than he is the material world and that kind of thing. And so that's what's going on with this song. I've never really been a fan of this one, if I'm being straight with you. I skip this one pretty much every time.
Yeah, I think it's the melody of it. It seems very nursery rhymish.
Yeah.
Um, and but I mean, I think the song itself, like to me, when I've actually listened to it all the way through, it kind of reminds me of something off of Pink Floyd's Animals, lyrically
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
It has the same kind of motif of comparing things to animals. And I mean, I think there's a song on that album called Pigs, right? Yeah, of course there is.
Yeah.
What I think, yeah.
That's a good callback. I'll go with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah. Again, I'm not real big on this. The next song you would think that I maybe wouldn't be big on because again, it's another bit of humor. it's another bit of what are they talking about? What's this? I mean, it's because it's so different. But I actually really like Rocky Raccoon, and I don't know if it's like it seems to me that you either really like this song or you just don't care for it. I don't know if anybody's well. I'm okay with it. Like you either really like it or you don't like it at all. And I don't know, man. Like and plus, I'm a Marvel Comics guy, so the fact that Rocket Raccoon from the Guardians of the Galaxy was that his name was derived from this, I take a lot of a great pleasure out of that because it's another example of my worlds kind of melding together. Um, But I don't know, man. Like again, you either love or hate this song. This was again written in Rishikesh. This was just a jam session. Supposedly it was John Paul and Donovan, who was pretty big at the time, I believe, still. And they were just hanging out playing, and they just came up with this song. Dude, I love this song because it seems to take itself very seriously. The lyrics are delivered very straightforward. There's no laughing, there's no chuckling, there's no tongue in cheek stuff, but yet it should be laughed off the album. I kind of think that's what makes this song work because 2 or 3 lines into it, you're like, okay, I'm starting to get into this now. Are you a fan of this song or no?
I like Rocky Raccoon. I won't say it's one of my favorites, but it's definitely again one of those songs where if this was another album, it might not have made the cut.
Yeah.
But it's still a good song. I would say it's one of the it's one of the Paul songs I think of when I first discovered the Beatles, and I'm like, Paul likes his filler, man. If you don't know anything else about Paul, he likes his filler.
Yeah, you're right about that. But yeah, I agree with you, and a lot of that's been said over the years too. That had this not been a double album, this would not be on the recording. So I totally get that. The next song is unique in a couple of different ways. One, it's the first contribution we get from Ringo on this album. Number two, this was not a Lennon McCartney composition. This was Richard Starkey, also known as Ringo Starr. Dude, I'm sorry. I like this song a lot, and I've said for years that his voice is terribly underrated. Um, Ringo knows what he can sing and knows how he can sing it and where he's comfortable with his range, and that's where he sings. He never tries to do too much, never tries to do too little. He gets into his comfort zone and stays there. Dude, I actually really like this song. I like the warped way the instruments sound in the background, the way the drums kind of sound muffled, and it's very. If you really listen to the lyrics, man, it's really off the wall. But dude, I've always enjoyed this song, man. I can't lie.
I agree. I do like Ringo's vocals on this. I don't know. It's something about the instrumentation on this song that I've always been like, what is this? What are we doing here? I think it's just the quirkiness of it, but that's kind of Ringo's style. Like even if you listen to his solo stuff, he does like quirkier sounds like this.
You know what I think a lot of it might be is the fact that he's never took himself seriously. He's never thought he has a good voice. So anytime John and Paul like they wrote Yellow Submarine for him because they wanted to be playful, because they knew how he felt about his own voice. And so let's just make it sort of a kid song. That way he can have fun. Which makes sense. I mean, if you feel that you're sort of on a negative anyway, you're going to try to add as many positives as you can. Um, but yeah, I'm digging it, man. I think it's a really good tune. It's one that, of course, he's done for years and years and years with Ringo's All Star Band and everything. And yeah, and I dig it, man. I really do. I think it adds to the White Album. I really do think that it brings something to it for sure. Uh, the basic track is Ringo playing drums, of course. Paul plays piano. And there was evidently an orchestral introduction to the song, but was left off the album because they said it was too bizarre. And I'm thinking, well, a lot of this song already sounds bizarre. How much worse could it have been?
That's a good that's a good question because the song in itself is already unorthodox and kind of quirky already. So I wonder what was just so off-putting about this orchestra that they didn't want to put it in there.
I'm wanting to say that I've heard this, and it may even be on the anthology. it's just an orchestra. It kind of sounds like a band tuning up. I don't recall it being too off the wall. I mean, I could be wrong in my memory here. Interesting side note here: Jack Fallon, who I'm not sure of this guy's backstory, played a bluegrass fiddle on the album, or on the song. So, depending on the order in which this was recorded, Fallon may have been the first guy other than a Beatle to play on a Beatles song, technically speaking. If he was in the studio before Clapton was, I'm just saying. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. This next song doesn't require much of a backstory. I don't think there's anything very deep to this. This is Why Don't We Do It in the Road? And this, again, came from Rishikesh. Paul allegedly saw two monkeys conducting their business in the middle of the street and was curious why humans were too civilized to do the same thing. Number one, you get arrested, Paul. Number two, we're not all rich and can just get bailed out of jail anytime and can do whatever we want, Paul. So, and plus, manners, Paul, class, I'm just saying. But, man, dude, Phil, talk about a song you don't go around singing too loud. I'd say this is probably the one, right?
Yeah, this is I don't know. This is another one that I'm not sure why it made the album. It's not a bad song, but it's kind of like it's so like, huh? Like when you first hear it, it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's different. And this is talk about songs that they would sometimes do. Not all the time, but occasionally one guy would do, and you'd think, why didn't the other guy? This sounds like a John song to me.
It does.
And supposedly he was pissed off that Paul didn't ask him to play on this tune. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say this. I really like Paul's vocals on this because they're very like gruff and bluesy. It sounds like something you could hear like Muddy Waters singing.
Yeah. And dude, not for nothing. A lot of those old school soul, R&B, and blues tunes, dude, that you couldn't play that stuff on the radio today. Like for its time, especially, it was woo. The lyrics were unapologetic, man, all about sex. So, yeah, I'm with you. I love the sound of his voice on this as well. It's really good stuff. So we go from Paul being all kinds of oddball on Why Don't We Do It in the Road to I Will, which is another high and low, especially for Paul, who's going from playful and naughty and it's nasty maybe to singing I Will. And dude, this is probably one of the sweetest love songs this guy's ever written. And man, if you sing this to the right girl at the right time, she's marrying you and that's it. So this is a wife getting song right here, man. This is great stuff. We've said this a couple of times here on this show, but I think this is one of his better songs. I love this song to death, man. What do you think about I Will?
Yeah, I agree. I think his vocals here are great. I feel like the lyrics are very beautiful. It's definitely sometimes Paul does this thing where he'll give you a bunch of sweet songs and it's like it almost feels like overkill, but he'll get that one in there that's perfect. And I feel like I Will is that on this album.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's really well done, and the acoustic guitar on here is beautiful, and the finger picking that's going on that guitar is freaking great, and it fits so well. And I love the fact that it's just him, and it's a very soft vocal, and dude, it just fits. This is Paul at his best. This is a prime example of why this guy was always the top of his game, more often than not, churning out hits, whether it was with John or by himself, and the mastery that this guy had cannot be overstated, man. The same for John, the same for all four of them, really. I mean, even to a certain extent, Ringo, honestly. But I think this is really on parade here for Paul in a big bad way. I love this song, and if you know anything about the story of John, again, we're going to bring you in here with Julia, and if you know anything about John Lennon's backstory, his mother is Julia. So um, this is a this may be, I think, one of John's better songs. It's one of John's more well-known songs, if you can have such a thing, considering he was one of the top two Beatles of all time. But dude, this is nothing short of a masterpiece, in my opinion. I just think this song is one of his best of all time.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, this is another one, like kind of like Blackbird, where it has this beautiful arpeggio going throughout the entire song, and yeah, it's just beautifully played. It's beautifully written. It's one of the better songs on the album for sure.
Yeah, and he uh, again, his mom was out of the picture pretty early on, and he was raised by his aunt, I believe. I believe that's how it was. And but he still held his mother in high regard. And this song is proof positive of that. It's got to be one of the sweetest songs he's ever written. And his vocals on this, man, it's almost like he's barely whispering through a lot of this, man. I think this might be one of his better vocal performances as well, especially on this album. Julia was actually killed in 1958, and John was only 17. For some reason, I was thinking she lived longer. But yeah, I had no idea actually it was that young for him. That takes us to side 3. That's right, kids. We're going to replace the album on the turntable. We're going to album the second part, the album number 2. We kick off with Birthday. And this song is supposedly 50-50 Paul and John. And made up on one, like made up and recorded all on the same day. Because again, it's John and Paul and they're awesome. And this is good stuff, man. They were inspired to write the song after seeing the first UK showing of the rock and roll film The Girl Can't Help It. And I'll tell you something, Little Richard's in that movie, and a lot of those old rock and roll films were just capitalizing on the trend of rock and roll. They're horrible. Like there's no story, the acting's crap. It was just an excuse to put rock and roll on the big screen so all the kids would come pay to buy tickets to see it. But The Girl Can't Help It was different. It was actually a story involved, and it's one of the better movies. And dude, a lot of rock and roll guys loved that movie because it embraced the genre so much. Birthday is just one of those songs that could replace the Happy Birthday song at any given time. I think. I love this song, man. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a banger if you want to call it a banger. It's like if you think of like rock, like I know there's a lot of people that think Beatles are kind of like, I don't want to say that they're softer in comparison to a lot of rock at that time, but some people have that opinion. And this song is just very much of its time. It's it had that same kind of vocal performance that you would find from somebody like
Mm-hmm.
Little Richard, and it just like that riff that goes throughout it is just so catchy. I love it.
Yeah, and dude, I'm wanting to say that there. All right, so depending on what part of the world you're in, you may or may not be familiar with stuff that Phil and I talk about on the show. But here in the States, we have had various different animatronic establishments over the years, and basically this consists of big electronic, characters on stage pantomiming to playing like songs, and it's like a place with arcade games, and there'll be like pizza, and kids of all ages come and watch the animatronic. If you've ever played Five Nights at Freddy's, it's kind of that, but far less creepy. Well, maybe just as creepy, depending on who you ask. Um, but one of those in question, I think, played this song every time there was a kids had a birthday. The animatronic figures would start moving from side to side like they're actually playing instruments and singing the birthday song by the Beatles. So Chuck E. Cheese comes to mind.
Hmm.
There was Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz Pizza Place. Do you have any of those things in Chicago, man? Like Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah, for sure. There's a Chuck E. Cheese here, like the Showbiz. Um, I forgot the other one,
There is a third one too. I know, but I can't remember the name.
but yeah, Chuck E. Cheese is like the biggest.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good stuff, man. Again, I dig this song a lot. So song number two, you just made the comment about the Beatles hitting hard with something. Dude, I think your blues could stand up with any nasty, gritty blues song. I mean, Muddy was a great blues man. I'm sure that he probably enjoyed this song quite a bit. I mean, this is really good stuff, man. I've always loved this song, and this is them at their finest, man. What do you think about this tune?
Yeah, this is blues through and through, man. I mean, if you listen to any blues from before this era, like you very much know what they're riffing off of. It's I mean, like BB, all of those guys from that era, it's that all rolled up into one. Like I don't, it's not a cover because it it's written by Lennon, right?
Yes.
So it's not a cover, but it just, I mean, if you listen to it without knowing that, you could easily think it was a cover.
Yeah, um, that's good stuff. So the story of your blues has always been that the four of them crammed together in a bathroom at Apple Studios.
Hmm?
Yeah. This is, I think, the story that Ringo told in the anthology, and they all like crammed their instruments in there and the multi-track and recorded this song. That's why there's the echo, and that's why it sounds like it's up close and personal because they are all legit in the same room, cramped up, playing these instruments. And dude, I think it shows, man. I think this has the feel of a jam session to me. So yeah, I love this song. I love this song to death, and the lyrics are great, and the guitar in this song is awesome. I just think everything fits. This is one of those examples of a song where everything just kind of fits, and like the lyrics. Supposedly, John said that he wrote the lyrics that he was trying to reach God and was feeling suicidal in India and wanted to write a blues song, but he didn't know if he could kind of imitate the big dogs of the blues genre. And so he basically just sort of took the song and just sort of pointed at himself and his own issues and depression and thoughts of suicide and stuff, and just made it more about himself than he did trying to mock anybody. But yeah, I mean, he sort of took the genre and kind of made it all his own with this, no doubt about it. Um, let's move on to the next song, Mother Nature's Son, which I like. This is one of those, if I told you that it was one of my favorites on the album, I'd be lying. I don't dislike the song, but I've never quite known what to kind of do with this song. What's your thoughts on Mother Nature's Son?
Yeah, it's another one of those where it feels like one of those jam out things where came up with this I came up with this catchy guitar and then I just sang over it and he just pitched it like, yeah, let's put this on the album. And I mean, again, that doesn't make it a bad song. It's a good song. It's bared, it's stripped down in comparison to a lot of their songs. It's just Paul singing with a simple acoustic guitar. But again, like it just feels like one of those things. Like if this wasn't on this album, would I really miss it? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could do without it. I don't dislike it at all because it's Paul and Paul's awesome. But um, yeah, I don't. Like I said, I could have done without this. I would have been okay if it hadn't been included. I don't really have a lot for you on this one. It's a nice, sweet song because Paul was very good. He's the king at that. Of the four of them, he's the one that could write a sappy, sentimental song and just kind of bring you to your knees with it because he's just that kind of a songwriter. And that's what he specializes in, kids. Um, so this is another example of his soft side and everything. And I dig it for that reason. But, that's kind of it because I'm not really crazy big on this song. This is the song I was trying to get to earlier because, to be honest with you, I did not know that of all people to have covered this song, Fats Domino actually covered this song later. Everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey. which is the dumbest title ever for like a song. It's so freaking good. And I don't even know what to make of it. This is John's quote about this song. That was just sort of a nice line that I made into a song. It was about me and Yoko. Everybody seemed to be paranoid except for us two, who were in the glow of love. Yikes. Everything is dear and open when you're in love. Everybody was sort of tense around us. What is she doing here at the session? Why is she with him? All this sort of madness is going wrong on around us at the time because we just happen to want to be together all the time. That's a whole other podcast there, Phil, about how come she freaking was there all the time. But I still love this song, man. What do you think about this tune?
Without getting into like the craziness of, you know, Lennon getting into this relationship with Yoko and leaving his wife, and then bringing Yoko everywhere he goes, and not seeming to understand why people think this is strange.
Right.
Um, but I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong. He was doing a lot of drugs at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, they all four. They were still doing. I'm sure LSD was still in the picture, and marijuana was always there. And yeah, I'm sure John was pretty much doing getting his hands on some good stuff at this time. So
Yeah, but I mean, what not jumping into all of his, personal personal struggles at that time. Um, I really like this song. There's something about it that's just catchy. Um, like it has like this weird jam vibe to it. I like it. I couldn't tell you what I believe this song is about, but I like it. If you had to tell me later that it was about him and his relationship with Yoko, I'd be like, okay.
yeah, and you know what? I don't care. We can get into it for a few minutes. It was weird. It was. I love my wife, and it's all good. But to be honest with you, do I want her every single place I go? No. I mean, it's just. And Phil, you know what it's like, man. First romance and things. You kind of don't want to be without the person, and you kind of always want to be around. If you can't be with them, you want to talk to them on the phone or whatever. I kind of
Yeah,
get it, but at the same time, like work is work, and not to call being the biggest band of all time work, but it's kind of your job, and these other three guys are depending on you to be there. And Ringo would say things to him like, don't you think this is a bit much? And John would say, what do you mean? He's like, well, anytime you go off and say something or do something or, just kind of be yourself, we all have to answer for it. And John's response was always, you only have to answer the phone, Ringo. So it was, again, very John, very tongue in cheek, very, I don't really care. And I'm going to be a smart ass about it. But hey, man, to each his own. I don't know. I don't get it. But I'm,
yeah. But see, I think if he's just hanging out with a woman all the time and he wants to be with her all the time, like to them, the studio was sacred. Like Paul had his relationships, George had his relationships. They all had their relationships, but they did not, you know, bring in a woman that was overbearing in a situation. And it wasn't just that he brought in this woman out of nowhere. It was like he brought her in out of nowhere, and he was still married.
yeah, yeah, yes.
So it was just awkward.
Yeah, we don't want to absolve this guy of anything, kids, and we don't want to glamorize the fact that he cheated on Cynthia. And, he actually cheated on Yoko later with their assistant, I think. Yeah, and John was a very, very complicated kind of guy. Again, not to throw off and say he's not responsible because he obviously is, but yeah, it's one of those things, man. It's kind of rock and roll life stuff happening, I guess, in some weird way. Sexy Sadie is more or less about the Maharishi. The bloom is off the rose by this time, kids. The Maharishi was a sham. The whole trip to Rishikesh was good for them because the Beatles got to get out of the States and away from England and just be themselves and unwind and be creative and have fun. And Ringo hated it there, by the way, because the food sucked. And I think he got dog sick while he was there. And, I don't think George was overly happy. And The retreat kind of ended up falling apart. People weren't staying the whole time they were going to stay. They were leaving early, and people started seeing through this guy. Sexy Sadie is about the Maharishi. What do you think about Sexy Sadie?
I love Sexy Sadie, man. It's not just that I love the song. I love the audacity of him writing a diss track to the Maharishi and put it on his album. And we've seen him do diss tracks before. I mean, if you've never heard "How Do You Sleep at Night, Kids," go out of your way to go find that, and listen to it. If you can, and even more, go and look for his recordings of it, and look how awkward George Harrison looks sitting in there recording this thing.
Good call. Yeah, you're right. It's a diss track on a guy that's not even in the band, and it's on a guy that's not even a rival musician. This is not a diss track written about Mick Jagger. This is about the guy that sort of lied to all of them, and I'm sure it took his share of money from them. Although I can't say that for sure, but I would say that this guy was getting donations and love all friends, as they say in the South here, and I would not be shocked at all. So it's funny because the press were kind of quizzing the Beatles on their way out of India when they got back home. They said, "What do you think about the Maharishi? Is he on the level?" And John said, "Well, I don't really know what level he's on." And he said, "But the point is that we needed to rest, and we came back rested, and we're ready to get back to work and ready to get back recording again." So if nothing good came out of the Rishikesh episode, it was obviously the White Album. Some people would argue that that's not the case with the next song, because the next song inspired a murderer. Helter Skelter, which if you don't know what that is, if your only sort of knowledge of the words Helter Skelter is because of Charles Manson, go listen to the song, because I promise you it's got nothing at all to do with murder. There is an amusement park slide in the UK called the Helter Skelter. And if you go back and listen to the lyrics of this song, when I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide, and I start back down, and I go for a ride. When I get to the bottom, and I see you again. That's not a road to hell or to damnation or to murder. This was an amusement park, kids. A good, nasty rock and roll song. And it's funny because part of the story of this song was that I think it was The Who had come out, made a comment that they had written the dirtiest, nastiest rock song. And John and Paul said, "Really? Okay, we'll see about that." So they took it as a challenge. Dude, this is a nasty freaking rock song, man.
This is I love Helter Skelter. Yeah. I mean, the way George plays on it, Paul's vocals on it are awesome. This is essentially the Beatles making a metal song before metal was a thing. It's awesome. I mean, to go back to what I said earlier with the DJ Danger Mouse project and how he mixed the Black Album and the White Album, he geniusly took Helter Skelter and he broke it up and he put it under 99 Problems, which chef kiss. It is the best song on the project by far.
I gotta go hear that now. That's good stuff. Yeah, it as Phil said, it's a great song. It's a great metal before metal was a thing. The song winds down with Ringo screaming at the top of his lungs, "I've got blisters on my fingers." I love that. Such good stuff, man. But yeah, Manson believed this was the road to hell and an oncoming race war and all this other hoo-ha nonsense. Yeah. So I don't know. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. It's all I can tell you. So let's get on with it here, kids. The last song of side 3 of the album, Long, Long, Long by George Harrison. I can't say that I dislike this song. I find it very intriguing because I don't have any idea what's going on. And the way the song ends on that upward turn, that vocal that ends really going high pitched there toward the end is all kinds of freaky. And it's actually part of a chord progression that taken from Bob Dylan's Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. And supposedly this was George's token of exhausted, relieved reconciliation with God. I mean, I get it, but like still, this has been one of the most interesting songs for me on this entire album. I've never really known what to make of it, dude. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't necessarily can say I can see like his relationship with God from it, but it's such an interesting song. Like it's hard to skip it because it's kind of like it's fascinating. Like I can't say that I sit in my car and like vibe out to it, but it's one of those like if you're just listening to the album at home or listening to it alone, like I could see just letting it play through and just just randomly going through things that are in your mind at the moment.
Yeah, you can kind of unwind with it until you get to the end, and it becomes, "Oh, what's going on here?" It's that end note that always kills me. I'm not really sure what's happening there, but it's different, and it's George, and George is awesome, so that's perfectly fine. But back to your earlier comment, Phil, about the fact that these four guys sound like they're moving in different directions. This is definitely another example of George moving in a different direction from the
Yeah.
Beatles.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was gonna say. It feels this is again where it feels like he is stretching his creative muscles and he's showing you like I don't want to make the same music we were making. I want to go in my own direction.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Flipping to side four, first track on side four. Phil, when it comes to being a Beatles fan, you're probably either uh, you're one of two Revolution guys. You're probably not a Revolution 9 guy. There's not many of those guys out there. But you're two Revolution guys. You're either Revolution 1 or you're the funked up, rock and roll Revolution, which I think they may have referred to as Revolution number 3, I think. I think it's referred to as number 2. I could be wrong. Which side are you on? Do you prefer the original on the White Album, or do you prefer the sped up with the hard Lennon guitar in it? What do you think?
I prefer the sped up version.
Yeah,
Um, I like Revolution 1 too. It's the same vocals, it's the same lyrics. I think I prefer Revolution 3.
yeah, same here. And I think, well, George basically got very annoyed because the other three guys were saying this song doesn't rock enough, so they all had to add crunching guitars and speed up the tempo. And he's like, "Fine, we'll do it your way." I'm like, "Thank God you did it their way, because the second version is much better, I think." Um, There's a couple of things on this song that do not appear on the other version. What is it, Boom Shooby Doo Wop, which is not on the recorded version of the next one, although they would do it live. But
Yeah.
uh, I always like that. And when I hear the second version of this song, when it gets to that, I always sing it out loud if I'm singing it or humming it in my head. I always get to that part and I sing it. So it's just that sort of that doo wop throwback. This is very much, again, kids, John being John. Speaking of revolution, speaking of, governments and why he's not falling for their crap and all the stuff that he has to say about it. This is one of those songs where, like, it's almost a protest song, I think you could call it, but it's the Beatles, so it doesn't come off like that. I mean, what do you take from the lyrics of this song, man? This is him kind of getting, I guess, at the very beginning of him getting kind of intense with his protests about what's going on in the world. You think?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a protest song. I think it was definitely at that time where people were being much more outspoken, and I definitely say it's one of those songs with the Beatles that fits that time period.
Yeah, and there's a reason, man, why people in the establishment consider him a threat, because he had so much power. Because people looked up to him, and whatever the Beatles said, they loved, and they hinged on their every words. Much like Dylan, Dylan was so over with fans that he became a threat as well. So, I mean, uh, Bob Marley, I think you can make the same argument. He was a threat to the Jamaican government because of the things he was saying and singing about. So, yeah, all that stuff made a lot of sense to me, man. And looking back through the prism of how these guys' lives ended, that can be a whole other examination for a whole other podcast. But yeah, I mean, you could take any sort of reference from that you want. But yeah, yeah, very much a protest song, I believe. Um, Honey Pie, again, Phil, highs and lows with this band. Now we get back to another curious song with Honey Pie. This is up there with Piggies for me. Um, I don't know how I feel about this one. I mean, what's your take on Honey Pie?
I feel like if you guys, go all the way back in the podcast to one of the other McCartney songs in there, Paul likes his fluff, guys. This thing. And but Honey Pie is up there with it. And boy, it's not that Honey Pie is bad. It's just that I just the follow up Revolution with Honey Pie. It's just a weird, it's a weird juxtaposition.
Yes. Yes, very much so. And it's yeah, I can't really make heads or tails of it. It's just one of those things where like um yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's like supposedly it was a direct homage to the British music hall style. Um Contains a famed actress calling by the term of endearment Honey Pie, who becomes famous in the United States, and her old lover who wishes for her to rejoin him in England. It's a humble admirer yearning for the return of his lover. Is not like the typical music hall plot. And yeah, I don't know. It's different. It's not really my bag if I'm being honest. Um,
Yeah.
Moving on here, we got three left kids for the whole album. Crazy. Savoy Truffle. I dig this song. I like the lyrics. I like that they're very sort of psychedelic on the tail end of the psychedelic thing because this is the album's in '68, right? So they're sort of coming after that and '69 Summer of Love. So yeah, maybe we're just actually getting into the thick of it. Maybe you could say, but yeah, uh, again very psychedelic lyrics, very different, very out there. Maybe a little avant garde, you could say, with it being George and everything. What do you think about Savoy Truffle?
I really like Savoy Truffle. Again, I'm a George guy, and I think you know, like, you could argue that some of the songs on this album are George's best, and I think Savoy Truffle is definitely up there. Isn't the song supposedly joking at um I was gonna say not the pianist, but it's a joke at Clapton
Yes,
eating sweets,
yes,
right?
yes.
And that it's gonna end up costing him because he's gonna have dentist. He's gonna have to go to the dentist. Um, but I love it. I really like the lyrics of it. It kind of has like this like sweet tone to it almost, and it's like almost like this trippy, almost like a trippy like sitting and eating too much sugar thing. And it's like even if you didn't know that that's what the lyrics were about, it just has like this syrupy, sweet feel to it.
It's very England. This song,
Yeah,
very England, very Austin Powers. I could totally hear this song in an Austin Powers movie because I think it would
yeah,
it would fit. It's very that sort of hip vibe. What's the word I'm looking for? That term, that um, uh, uh, hipster, I guess. I don't know. Mods maybe, and
yeah.
yeah, I think it fits. And dude, as we're coming down to the end of this album, man, I think the Wide Album, if nothing else, was a coming out party for George Harrison, where he
It
got
was.
to show what he was made of, man, big time. And I think this is another example of that. Cry Baby Cry. I've never really understood a lot of this song either, but I enjoy this song. I always have. I find it interesting that the opening lyric, "Cry Baby Cry, make your mother sigh. She's old enough to know better," and then it just stops, and then you're off to the lead into the chorus, and I'm like, what's the next lyric? It almost feels like there's a dangling part there that there's no lyric to, which I want to keep singing the song every time I hear it, but there's no vocals right there, which is really weird. Um, this song was written by John, and it was supposedly like a lullaby for his son Julian, I believe, is the story to this. And
Hmm.
yeah, so it's again, it's different. And supposedly he got the words from an ad, and that some of the lyrics are from the song, from a nursery rhyme song, "Sing a Song of Sixpence." So that's good stuff, man. Very good stuff. Very different. Again, I can't say this is my favorite song on the album, but yeah, I like it, man. I do enjoy this tune. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. it's very chorus driven. There isn't much in the verse department, but I like it. It's oddly one of the signature songs on this album for some reason. Just because when I think this album, for some reason, I always think of this song. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's one of those songs that I heard first around the time that I discovered this album or what.
Yeah, I think it's one of those little blurbs on the album that shouldn't be thrown away because it's especially good blurb. The interesting note to this song is that it's followed up immediately by a song that does not fit at all, and it's just a very very quick thing called "Can You Take Me Back." And supposedly this song was written by Paul and never finished, had no official name, but they just tagged it on to the end of it for no good reason. Um, and I don't know, man. It's just one of those things where I think this is maybe just another example of the Beatles just being the Beatles and doing whatever they want to do because it's them and why not. Um, so yeah, I've always thought that was a very interesting addition to this tune for sure. So the next one, this is the other revolution that you probably don't dig too much. So this is a good one. I used to have this habit of sleeping to music. And I think it was just not just because the fact that it's music and I'm a music guy, but also because um, having noise and like nowadays I'll use the fan. Like it's some kind of white noise to have in the background. Well, in the middle of the night, it was stuck on Revolution 9. And so I had the worst nightmare and woke up with this weird sound bite of a song, and it's the weird orchestra chorus thing and these weird voices. And I woke up for a second thinking, oh my God, where am I? What's happening? And I'm like in that middle of the post nightmare phase where you wake up thinking, oh crap, am I okay? Was that real? And the song scared the crap out of me. And it was just setting the tone for the nightmare, I guess, man. I don't know what to make of this. This is just John. I've said this a lot in the course of this show. This is just John being John. Very avant garde. I think this is probably more Yoko than John anyway. And I don't know, dude. I have no idea what to do with this at all.
Yeah, this is John and Yoko doing their artsy phase, and you know if you don't have anybody to tell you to cut this thing out of here, this is definitely one of those songs that doesn't need to be on the album. It doesn't really add anything to the album. It's just I don't know. And I mean, yeah, it's weird because you could say that that is one of the biggest strengths of this album is that it's just this hodgepodge of all of these great songs that they made at that time, but at sometimes it's the weakness of this album as well. And I think this song is definitely one of them. It's like why did this song make the album? Did no producer come in and go, guys, why are we putting this on the album? And maybe they did, and Lennon just argued it to death, and they just conceded. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know is the best way to put it because I really have no clue what's going on here. Of course, surprise, surprise, kids. A huge influence on this song was John's thing with Yoko. Lennon and Ono had recently recorded their own album, Unfinished Music Number One, Two Virgins. That album covers something to look at. Lennon said, once I heard her stuff, not just the screeching and howling, but her sort of word pieces and talking and breathing and all this strange stuff, I got intrigued. So I wanted to do one. I'm thinking, no, I finished that sentence with, so I wanted to run, but that's me. Um, yeah, dude, I don't have any idea what's going on here. I'm not a fan of this at all. Listen, kids, if after your evening of deep diving on Paul is Dead, have fun with that. Deep dive sometime on John's fascination with numbers. I'm currently reading Nowhere Man, The Last Days of John Lennon, and it's fascinating. This guy was obsessed with numbers. More importantly, the number 9, which is why this is Revolution number 9. There was a book that was released, I think, in the 50s or 60s, and it was all about the study of numbers and how they applied to your life and all this other hoo ha. And John was convinced, and because 9 was his number, and I'm telling you, Phil, it's a whole other deep dive, man. It's crazy, but that's why this is Revolution number 9. We wrap the White Album up with the drummer. We wrap it up with Ringo doing Good Night. this probably is the best sung thing he's ever done. Because he's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? This sounds like a lullaby to me, and it's just, dude. There's something about this song I really enjoy, man. I really think this is a good song. I really like it.
So when you finish this album and you get all the way to the end and it's Ringo singing Goodnight, it almost feels like this album is just a mess of them all going, no, I'm gonna put this song on here. Now I'm gonna put this song on there. And they're all going on and on for this entire 30 plus song album of I want my song in the mix. I me my, to quote
Yeah.
George Harrison. And then we get to the end of it and they all just walk off stage and Ringo's just there like, okay, well I'll just put my song at the
Oh my God, that's great. I freaking love that.
That's just how it feels. It just feels like, yep, I'll just put this here. Yep, we'll just tie a bow on that.
That would make my life if I found out that actually happened and the album comes out and they go, wait a minute, what's this? And Ringo's like, oh, I just thought I'd put my own thing on the end. That's good stuff. I love that to death. Yeah, you're right. And you know what? What better way to end a quirky, weird, often psychedelic, often bizarre album with some great songs on it? You end it with this. Yeah, this is crazy, man. I don't really know what to make of that, but I think it was good stuff. Well, there you have it, kids. There is the White Album. And that's what we got for you this time around. Phil, we've just been through a whole bunch of songs and talked about them all. So I'll get two things from you. I'll give me your favorite song, your favorite track on the White Album, and give me your last word on this classic by the Beatles.
Favorite song. Oof, that's tough.
I know, right?
That's tough. I'm going to go with Blackbird. I think that's my
Ooh,
favorite song of
good
the album.
choice.
I think Helter Skelter is very close second to me, but I'm gonna go with Blackbird.
Interesting. What's your final word? What's your final takeaway from this album? What do you think?
Um, I as much as I feel like it is at times not cohesive, I feel like it's a bunch of songs thrown together at times. It's possibly my favorite Beatles album because I mean, for the amount of content that's here, there's a lot of quality. Like most of the songs here are some of their better songs for throughout their entire catalog.
Mm.
Um like there are a lot of songs that I feel like don't belong here, but again, once it hits once it hits that part where you get uh it's peak songs, it doesn't miss. Like there are several songs in a row that are just perfect, classic, iconic Beatles songs.
Yeah, I mean it's I don't know if I think this is their greatest album ever, but if I don't, I maybe would in an hour because it just the importance of this album cannot I don't think could be overstated. I think it's important to note how big this album is. Yes, there's a lot of fluff on it, but you know what? When you're the Beatles in 1968, you've had 5 years, 6 years of being on top of the world. I think you've earned the right to have just a little bit of fluff. You know, constantly chased and constant, the decoy cars and constant interviews and never having a day off and always have a microphone in your face. You can't come out of the bathroom without getting interviewed by a reporter somewhere. And if they want to throw a little bit of fun onto an album, more power to them. But like Phil said, there's a lot of classics on here. For me, for me, it's between Glass Onion and Your Blues. I love both those songs so much, and like you said, dude, it's hard to pick because there's so many quality songs on this album. But um, I enjoy this, man. I could deep dive every Beatles album ever done and be perfectly happy with that because they're my favorite band of all time. The White Album for me is, yes, it's experimental. Yes, it's different. Yes, it's got some bizarre stuff on it. But at the end of the day, it's the Beatles doing what the Beatles do best, doing it their way. I don't think you can ask much else from that from the Fab Four at any given time. Just let them be them, and they'll write some hits for you and make some money for your record company. So and make history in the process. So I'm all for it. I'll continue to listen to this album. I think it stands the test of time, and I'm always going to dig it. So. And that is the White Album. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.